Hi, Zizaran here with another episode of Path of Exile University, because that is how complicated PoE is. This is intended for PoE2 players who want to try playing PoE1, but maybe felt it was a little bit too overwhelming to learn. So this is a teaching series, and we have several of these up. And a lot of the things are shared between the games, obviously. Like a lot of the mechanics that are in Path of Exile 2 came from Path of Exile 1. But a lot of the stuff in this video assumes that you are a PoE2 player. Some of it will be really useful if you haven't played Path of Exile as well. And I have another thing called Everything Explained, where I basically make a new character and try to explain everything in the game as it comes up. But either way, I wanted to make this video, and hopefully we got it out before launch, just to give a little bit of extra pointers for particularly PoE2 players. And most of the changes here should be up to date, but GGG do like very last minute change things. So yeah, they should be up to date, but they might not be. So Path of Exile 1 feels fundamentally different than Path of Exile 2 because there is no WSD. It's not as smooth. It's not as modern. It doesn't have the same rigging with the character models and stuff like that. The lighting looks different. It is worse in a lot of these ways. It is slightly easier to run on low-end computers, and things like the map might look slightly worse. I always recommend putting the landscape transparency all the way to the left. That gets rid of like unnecessary clutter. And visual clutter in PoE1 is generally really bad. Does depend on what build you're playing, but keep that in mind. Now, PoE1 does feel snappier in some ways. It's a little bit more reactive. We're faster. We also have more character power in a lot of ways. You can also have some like stutter problems, especially EU servers have really bad network connection. But yeah, like I said earlier, all the PoE2 league mechanics are originated from Path of Exile 1. I'm sure we'll have some unique mechanics in PoE2 eventually, but so far we don't really have that. Now, while the mechanics look the same, they function slightly differently in some cases. And the rewards are also a bit different. Currencies, at least usually look the same. Some of them, again, function differently. So you will have some familiarity. But like, for example, Chaos Orb, very different between the two games. In Path of Exile 2, we have the rune system. In Path of Exile 1, we have the crafting bench. Crafting bench does offer more power, is a little bit more versatile. You can use it on white items. You can use it on blue items. Like items in Path of Exile 1 have, similar to Path of Exile 2, one prefix and one suffix. If a blue item only has one prefix, you can use the crafting bench to craft a suffix. If it has two prefixes, two suffixes, you can craft either a prefix or a suffix. Ground loot as well matters a lot more in a way. You will find kind of more complete items and more items in general. And you actually craft in PoE1 a lot differently than PoE2. In PoE2, you find like the base item and then you use a transmute. If it doesn't hit anything, then that's a dead item. That's very different in PoE1. You do really want to use an Everything's filter blade for item filters. Even just using a basic one will give you a big leg up. And obviously, eventually, you can start customizing it. But if you go to filterblade.xyz, it's very simple on how to download it. It's similar to a filter in Path of Exile 2. You just need that in the filter folder. Now, life is very viable in PoE1, and our defenses are a lot more fleshed out. That's something Path of Exile 2 really struggles with. And in Path of Exile 1, you're not locked in to particular weapons in the same way. Like, for example, Ground Slam would be like staves, axes, or maces, not just maces, which is really nice. So you have a lot more freedom there. And there's no like, yeah, they're not as unique, right? Like axes aren't like, wow, way better at particular things. It's just, there'll be different implicits. Like there'll be a bleed implicit, a stun implicit, maybe axes have faster attack speed, that kind of thing. It's less locked than Path of Exile 2. Portals are instant in Path of Exile 1, but they do consume a portal scroll, which you can run out of. You can also sell portal scrolls for wisdom scrolls, and you can buy portal scrolls from the vendor. There is a hotkey to use portal scrolls, so it's really nice. And not having that channeling time of like your character doing that is also really nice. And like in PoE1, like in PoE2, there's no XP loss or gain in Pinnacle boss fights. So that's the same with both games. Identifying is with a scroll of wisdom, not an NPC. We don't have an identify all. You need to right click the identify and then left click the items. You can hold shift to keep using the orb. Skill gems socket into your gear sockets, not into a skill gem panel. So there will be a lot of socket pressure. Some builds will have to use, for example, unset rings to get additional sockets to use. And early on, we care a lot more about the sockets. Like, let's say I'm playing Earthshatter tomorrow, which I am, which starts with Ground Slam. I really want to find a 3-socket, 3-linked red on something early on. And then I would maybe not even care about putting on a really good rare item over that, and I care a lot more about the sockets. The skill tree has like the same idea. It is more condensed, and there are no shared starting location. Like in PoE2, you have the sorceress and the witch. Or is the sorcerer and the witch? Either way, like you have multiple classes with the same start locations. You don't have that here. It's all very unique, and passive points don't change at all based on what you are. Everything is static. Just some things are further away from others. The small passives are fixed. There are no like turning into strength nodes and stuff like that. There are some jewels that can do conversions, but other than that, like there's no dynamic skill tree in the same way. Later on, you will explore something called cluster jewels, which is craftable parts for your skill tree. But yeah, notables don't have a downside. There are some small exceptions to this, but generally they're pretty niche. There's no like, or at least there's a lot less of the whole like 30% more fizz damage, 15% billion times less attack speed. There's a lot less of that. And you can get from one edge of the skill tree to another. There's a lot more endgame, like a lot more to do in the endgame. It can be really overwhelming. And as a new player, you're a lot better off just focusing on one mechanic, learning that. Like you can maybe like interact a little bit with different ones just to see like, oh, I really like Breach. I don't like Blight. And then you look up videos like, how do you specialize in these mechanics? What do I do to really like make a lot of profit from this? Because there's so many different ones. So if you're going to try doing all of them a lot, it'll be a bit overwhelming. Oh, sorry. Last day before lunch. And the Atlas skill tree is it's done very well. It'll feel like you never have enough points. And you're always feeling like, oh, I want to get this thing, but then I am missing out on this other thing. So that's a very good thing. And you can really choose what to specialize in. And yeah, the Atlas is not an endless field. It is something you complete. It only has like 115 maps. And that is a very big difference. It's very cool. The Path of Exile 1 Atlas, chef's kiss. So good. I really hope we eventually get something like that in PoE2. I'm not a huge fan of the infinite thing. I think that works good as like a mechanic. It shouldn't be the main map mechanic in my opinion. Another thing that's very different in PoE1 is we have phasing. You can literally phase through monsters. So use this potion here, the quartz flask, and this will literally let you go through monsters. Now, a really good thing with that, combined with the worst AI of Path of Exile 1, is that it's a really good defense to literally run face first into monsters. So you'll see streamers doing this, and you're maybe like, wow, this is nuts. But since the monster is starting to attack towards you, by the time you're through them, they're still trying to attack that location, and they're just going to miss. So it actually ends up being a really good form of defense. Gold is not a primary resource in Path of Exile 1. It is used to respec, gamble, etc., but it's not used to buy things off the vendors. We have a more fleshed out orb system here. We actually have vendor recipes. So we don't have the smashing benches in PoE 1. And we have vendor recipes for example, off the top of my head, let's say you have a blacksmith whetstone, you have a blue or yellow rustic sash, and a weapon that'll actually just give you a physical damage weapon. Things that are really cool. You can actually find these at like Googling PoE Wiki, PoE recipes, and they're very cool. Flasks are important, very important, and they can be automated in Path of Exile 1. We have instilling orbs and enkindling orbs. Enkindling orbs are used less outside of Mage Blood. But instilling orbs incredibly useful. It'll have things like when the potion is full, you use it. So That means that while you are mapping, you can effectively just have permanent potions on without ever clicking them. And we have utility potions, which are very different from all the stuff we have in PoE2. There is no dodge roll, but we do effectively have a lot of dodge rolls with things like Leap Slam, Flame Dash, or Frostblink, loads of different movement abilities. And you can get a 40 movement speed Quicksilver within 10 minutes of starting. Whoa, I'm so sorry. I will probably be yawning a lot for this. It's the last video I'm recording before lunch. There's also a lot of more manual movement, and running in a circle around a boss, which I do showcase in a lot of my videos, is incredibly efficient as a form of defense. You can fully reforge gear in PoE1. This is a very large change. In PoE2, you're always going to be picking up a new base, doing some basic crafting on it, and maybe like step 1, successful, step 2, oh, it bricked. Start over, find a new base. In Path of Exile 1, you find the base, and you're just crafting the entire time. So you don't need to find the 1,000 of the same base in the same way. You kind of do, because there's a system called recombinators, but you can craft one item in PoE1 from start to finish. Recombinators does change that a little bit, obviously. So I have separate videos on recombinators. It's a bit more complicated. But one thing that's nice and consistent is either way, you are going to be clicking a lot. So keep that at least. We have enchants, implicits, and fractured modifiers. They're very different. Fractured modifiers is so different in PoE1 because like PoE2, it just saves, it hard codes the stat on, but our Chaos Orbs reroll the entire item. So same with our essences, they reroll the entire item. So let's say that I have 160 life fractured on a chest, and then I use Deafening Chaos. That's guaranteeing the Chaos resist, it's guaranteeing the life, everything else rerolls. So you can get really, really cool items with these combos. And like we touched on earlier, the crafting bench is instead of runes. It requires an empty affix slot, but you can change that at the cost of currency. You can remove it. You can change a new one later. And there are meta crafting, like suffixes cannot be changed. And then using a currency like Chaos Orb to reroll, or Reforge Harvest mods, which we haven't even started talking about yet. But we have a lot more very in-depth crafting. And we have a really good third-party website called Path of Exile that really lets you experiment with these. And it's such a wonderful tool as a new player to learn. I'm going to show it real quick. I'm a huge fan of Path of Exile. And it lets you like really experiment with a lot of different, let's see. So let's see, I've just like opened a body armor here, but you can literally like alchemy craft, chaos orb spam, experiment with different like harvest reforges and see how that affects the item. So it's free currency. You can craft infinitely and just play around with it. It's super useful. Some attacks will require specific weapon classes, like ground slam will require a mace, a staff, or an axe. Wands have their own projectile skills as well. Like you can't use lightning arrow with a wand. But sometimes it will not specify, and then it's generally a bit more generic. But here's some examples of specifications. And the skills live inside a skill gem. You don't shove them inside your character. You shove them inside slots. So if we put all of these in, this is, I think that's Fireball, but this is faster casting, and this is increased critical strikes. You can also hover over the active gem, and that would like show that the others are connected. They'll highlight. So that's pretty intuitive. You can't have multiple of the same support gem in the same skill. Like if I do Fireball, faster casting, that doesn't do anything. But unlike PoE2, I could have faster casting on my Frostblink, I could have faster casting on my Curses, and I could have faster casting on my main skill. There's no limit to how many times you can reuse gems, but you do have a limited amount of sockets. Maximum natural sockets is limited by minimum item level. And you might think, like, is there a limit for links? But no, it's all about the sockets. And you can bypass these with the crafting bench. So let's say that you accidentally buy a low-level item from someone. It's item level 30, but you really need this item to be 6-socketed. You can bypass that with 350 jeweler orbs and the socket ability in the crafting bench. And then once you have it 6-socketed, there's no penalty, right? You can still 6-link it. But either way, 4-socket at 25, 5-socket at 35, and 6-socket at 50. You use jeweler orbs to reroll this up to the max, and it cannot overwrite the max. So let's say that an item level is 35 and you're spamming shift click with the jeweler orb, it will stop once it's 5-socketed. And quality affects this. So if an item is 20 quality, it will link better, it'll jeweler better. It says that on the jeweler orbs too, if you don't believe me. Color is biased by the attribute requirement. So let's say that you're doing a item with 10 strength and 10 dex requirement, that'll get more red and green gems. However, if you're doing an item with 190 dex, it'll almost not get red and blue sockets. Now, you can buy character class gems from vendor at any point, and you can buy your character class gems from vendors at any point, and from the normal vendors, they're going to be leveling with you. They do stop at like 13 or 15 or something. Once you unlock Act 6, you can buy level 1 gems. This can be really good if you want like low stat requirements for one of our movement abilities and stuff like that. But yeah, there will be some quests for gems or like some part of your progression for gems. But yeah, once you have Act 6, you can buy any gem from Lily. So that's good. Unlinked gems don't interact with each other, but they do interact with any skill or support on the gem itself. So you could also have multiple skills, like you could have Fireball and Flame Blast, both linked to faster casting in the same one. So there are some like use cases for that. Linked skills which work together are highlighted, like I said earlier, and the letters on the skill in the bottom right on your hotbar will also change, so you can see that they're working. If they don't do that link, if they don't add a letter, then it is not working. Passive points are very impactful, and messing up your tree will create issues a lot faster in PoE1, and respecking is a little bit trickier. We do have gold respec now. I still think it's a bit trickier in PoE1. They obviously have made it easier. We also have regret orbs, which is nice. But yeah, it is easier to mess up a character. I feel like PoE2. Path of Exile 2 is a lot more intuitive when it comes to builds. So PoE1, you really want a build guide. It's very easy to get to the point where you've sort of almost ruined a build in PoE1. It is a lot easier in PoE2 there. So keep that in mind. Follow a build guide and maybe try experimenting on your second or third character. And you can finish the storyline with almost everything, but then once you get to maps, you'll need a lot more like min-max. The mechanical skill is a large part of their character power as well. But you can actually get face tank characters where you're borderline immortal. They very rarely give you actual immortality. But yeah, hardcore, you want to rely on mechanical skill and dodging abilities. And obviously, like Juggernaut, Chieftain, really known for being really tanky and will let you face tank characters or bosses eventually. Attack builds really focus on their weapon. It's all about their weapon. Whereas gems, like a spell build, it's like Fireball, we get a large damage increase every time you level. And in PoE1, over leveling is quite a lot easier than PoE2. So obviously when you're holding down control and entering a zone, same like PoE2, you can refresh that zone and farm it again. In PoE2, you start getting really heavy diminishing returns 4 or 5 levels above. PoE1, you can get all the way like 7 or 8 levels above and get a really big damage boost. And obviously since our gems are leveling, it's very substantial. If you're 8 levels over the zone, you are a god. So that's nice and a very big difference. And you can stack armor in PoE1 for both damage and tank. And like I said, our defenses are a lot more fleshed out. So it's nice. There's no spirit in Path of Exile 1. You reserve your mana. It'll actually be a pain sometimes, especially early. You can accidentally reserve too much mana and you're constantly using your mana flask. You're running out of mana. It feels really clunky. So it is a very different system there. There are mods on items and the passives to like give you more reservation efficiency. And you can actually reserve your life as well. There are masteries as well, which I think is one of my favorite features of PoE1. It basically, once you've got some of the clusters, like for example this one, once you've got that third point, you actually get to choose one of these. It'll cost you 1 extra point, but you could take 30% reduced crit strength. So it's really, really nice. You don't have to take them, but very often they are incredibly useful. And again, like I said, you should use a build guide. I think it's very important for a new player. It's just so easy to cock up PoE1 and you really want to use it. And Eventually, you can start being a lot more creative, but hopefully that's at the point where you have more currency. But you can be very creative in PoE1, especially on softcore. Currency, it does very, very much what it says on the item. They are different than PoE2. Like we have alterations, which let you reroll blue items. But yeah, we have augment. It adds something. So augment orb, if it's a blue item, well, it only works on blue items. If it has a prefix, it'll add a suffix. If it has a suffix, it'll add a prefix. We have reforging items like Chaos is a full reforge. It'll guarantee 4 stats, but then reroll. Like you can never use a Chaos and get 3 stats. And yeah, a lot of stuff like that. Randomize, we have Divines, we have Blast Orbs. This will just reroll already existing things on a mechanic. We have Remove, like Annulment. It'll just remove a stat. And yeah, so they're pretty self-explanatory. The average crafting as well is not just like slamming one single orb per base. Like I said, it's a lot about rerolling a lot. Like sometimes we'll use like 1,000 essences on one item. Obviously that's like very endgame crafting, but don't be like surprised if you're using 10 to 20 essences on one item to get something usable. And we have so many more mechanics for crafting. We have essences, harvest, fossils, expedition, and expedition is incredible in PoE1. Really cool. And yeah, you start like you choose the starting point a lot more differently here. You can have like a starting base with fractured gear, and there are actually item bases that can be really valuable for that. Vendors offer currency shards, so you can like, there's conversions basically, like you can buy alterations off the vendor, you can buy augmentations off the vendor, portal scrolls, so they can be like exchanged upwards for a fee. It's very useful. Gold is still used to gamble with though, and it will be incredibly useful. And the vendors will refresh part of what they're selling every time you level, just like PoE2, so some things will appear and some things will disappear. Vendor recipe system, this is the one I gave an example of earlier. Super useful. I would recommend looking at it a little bit. Selling a 6 link will give you 20 fusings. Selling a 6 socket will give you 7 jeweler orbs. Loads of useful stuff like that, which is quite different. Leveling is running down a proverbial pipe in a way. It'll show you the direction that you're growing. There are some side branches. Most of the time, it's not always needed to do the side branches. Some of them will give you skill points. I do a series called Everything Explained where I usually do a almost full campaign run through, and you can just copy the run I do. It'll usually be like you'd slow down and pause to keep up, but it's sort of like Bob Ross paint along. I really like the series. I think it helps a lot of new players, and it's basically acts as a full tutorial, but obviously it is very long. It's a play along. You want to keep up with your resistances. It's pretty easy with the crafting bench. Remember that you can use the crafting bench even on a white item. So if you find, let's say, a 3-socketed red chest piece, you can just craft cold resist on that. You don't need to be blue or rare item to craft. And in PoE1, you don't really need to talk to NPCs to start the quest. You just do it. And then you need to talk to like Clarissa in Act 3. That's almost it. You do lose 30% resists when you kill Kitava. First in Act 5, then in Act 10. And the game does pretty fast assume that you are fully resist capped and stay resist capped. On softcore, it's not as big of a deal, but you do want to get resist capped very early, in my opinion. You do need to finish the storyline to 2 maps. You can't just skip that. There's no campaign skip. Yeah. And you can do slash passives. Once you've killed Kitava, it'll actually tell you which ones you're missing, which is really nice. And PoE1, it is a simpler game. Bosses are mechanically simpler. It's a lot less like crazy animations and stuff. And running in circles, honestly, is your bread and butter for every boss almost. Bosses in Stones don't reset on death in the same way as they do in PoE2. We have Pantheon powers, which I think it's U, to open the panel, which basically give you some extra passive powers. We have 7 classes. They all have 3 ascendancies each. And Scion has 1 super ascendancy, which combines the others. And Ascendancy, you don't really have any choice. This is just lab. Take it or leave it. There are traps. You have to fight a boss. It is a medium core mechanic. If you die on softcore, you have to do the entire thing all over again. It is very similar to Trial of the Sekima in some ways. And he changes. Yeah, like I said, it resets daily. Everything. The boss is different. Like whether he uses, the weapon he uses is different daily. And then there's some like mini game. Like he'll either get buffed or shoot out some extra moves. It is a little bit different each day, but you do need to ascend there. No other choice like we have in PoE2. For combat and stats, you'll have bars in the bottom right with your main skill, movement skill, etc. You can access a second bar with holding control. You can rebind everything on that bar though. So for example, I have frostbite on mouse button 5 like in this image, but it's on my second bar. And I never need to hold control on mouse button 5. I just click mouse button 5. I don't see that second bar. I don't need to see my frostbite for that to be used. Speed in PoE1 is very desirable, and while PoE2 isn't too far different from PoE1 in the actual size of the campaign and everything, but we are literally 3 or 4 times faster, so it's incredibly fast in PoE1. On-death explosions are a thing as well. We do have less of that than we used to, but there are some items, especially at the endgame, that let you explode monsters on death. It's very desirable. And we very quickly get to like full screen clearing in PoE1. So it is a lot faster. It's very different, can be a little bit overwhelming there for PoE2 players. It's very fun. I do super recommend it. Rare monsters can still be dangerous, but the game is very different. It's also a lot more one-shotty in the way it kills us. It's very like you're running along like a god, one-shotting everything, and then suddenly something one-shots you back. Resist values go between minus 200 and 90. So you can't go above 90 max res. And damage over time skills scale from their own stats. Initial hit is mostly irrelevant to the dot portion of the damage. And there is a dot cap as well. It's basically an integer cap. I think it's 36 million is the most you can do, 39 million. We also do a lot more damage in PoE1 than PoE2. Minions, totems, and other allied damage methods are very viable. I think most things are very viable for everything in the game right now. Some things will be slightly out of favor, like some patches bows are out of flavor, sometimes minions. But generally, any archetype can do every content in the game, except maybe varying in things like Valdo tier 17 maps. That's about it, though. Honestly, PoE1 is remarkably balanced for if you just want to do the content. Obviously, some things are a lot stronger than others. Evasion evades attacks no matter what the type of the attack is. Evasion also has entropy. This is very important because that means that you can never get unlucky or lucky. You can never like randomly dodge or like get hit 9 times in a row. If dodge used to be a thing in PoE where you would have, let's say, 70% chance to dodge, and you could get lucky and dodge 50 times in a row. You could get unlucky and get hit 50 times in a row. Entropy is sort of like a hidden number that gets put on the enemy, and it sort of says you get hit once every 7 times. But the borderline thing, or important bottom line there, is let's say you have 30k evasion, you're never going to get hit twice in a row. And that's really nice. So it is incredibly good because that means that as long as you're not getting one shot, if you're like, let's say you have 5k life, and you're getting occasionally hit for 3k life, you're not going to die because you can heal back up by the time you're getting hit. There's also no heavy stun in PoE1. But there is stun, but you can get stun immune, which is nice. Armor is very strong in PoE1, very different from PoE2. And it becomes a very important part of multi-layer defense. It works similar in PoE2, where it's less effective against big hits, but it ends up being an incredibly good part of your defense. So don't ignore armor. It's very important. Even something like 5 or 10,000 armor is very good. And then you have other things like suppression. You have more advanced defenses, like we have jewels that give us like crazy defenses. Trigger skills use cooldown. They don't build energy. So there's like cast on crit, cast on channeling. They're just happening every now and again. You can get cooldown recovery speed. There's no active block. We only have passive block, which sort of the max you can get is like 90, 88-ish for a gladiator. Around there. Non-damaging elements are based on your hit damage. I love this system. It's not everything in PoE1 is based around something like a Hammer of the Gods. They have like some skills are better with ailments, some skills are not. And like they're built differently based on like how fast, or it's a slow moving skill, but they all have different things. So it's a really good way. I really like that. I hope they implement that in PoE2. It makes a lot more skills viable for dots, and it doesn't make everything rely on one skill. And crits, well, like if you're a cold skill and you crit, that'll freeze or chill things. If you're a lightning skill and you crit, it'll shock things. It's pretty straightforward. Same with ignite. It's not like that like weird system where it's like, well, maybe you're dealing enough of the health of the monster that you're actually igniting. We don't have that, which I like a lot. For the combat and stats, charges grant bonuses while active, and these are like passive bonuses. So endurance charges give you fizz and ele mitigation. Frenzy charges give you more damage and speed. Power charges give you more crit. And yeah, I can't remember. There's no damage associated in that, right? They changed power charges for a while, but anyway, the bottom line here is these give you passive bonuses. I think it's just crit chance for power charges still. Remember they tried to change that and mix them a bit with frenzy. But either way, they're really good. And we also have minimum charges, so you could have 2 minimum endurance charges. These can't be consumed by anything, but they are incredibly just always up and can never be drained by a monster. So here we can see we have 3 active endurance charges and 1 minimum frenzy and 1 minimum power. So it's a pretty cool system. I like it a lot more than the PoE2 one. And as you can see, there are a lot of things that are familiar, but a little bit different. I just wanted to go through some of these things. Obviously, we could make these like hours and hours long and detail every change, but hopefully these were some changes that gives you an idea of what to look out for, what is different. And we're going to have a feedback form. We'll put that in the description if you want to give feedback, especially if you're a PoE2 player and you found something useful, you found something not useful, something confusing. We do want to make these better, and I hope you guys enjoy them. This is my first time recording one off stream. I'm also just a little bit scrapped for time, so I'm very tired when recording this. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.